The next Smash game will soon be upon us, folks. Sakurai has finished Kirby Air Riders and now is getting dragged away into the Smash mines once again. Okay, we don't technically know that, but considering that we're 7 years from when Smash Ultimate released and 5 years since Sora's inclusion, and we haven't heard as much as a peep for the next installment, I get the feeling the next Smash game didn't start development until now, since Sakurai would have been too busy making Kirby Air Riders. I guess that means my opening where I said the next Smash game would soon be upon us is a really stupid statement, since at minimum there's still 2 more years before we even hear anything on the next Smash game. But still, the next Smash is going to happen, and it's interesting to talk about, since the big question is, how do you follow up on Smash Ultimate? That shit had 70 characters at launch, with every single veteran returning, 103 stages, all with like Battlefield and Omega variations, many assist trophies, items, all that stuff. It was a massive game. There were, unfortunately, compromises to make that happen. Trophies ultimately got cut and replaced with spirits, so all the time that would have gone modeling them was instead used to model things like characters and stages. And speaking of even those, there was less newcomers than usual. If we don't count clones and like DLC and stuff like that, just looking at the base game, I believe Smash Ultimate has the least amount of newcomers, and the stages were even less. There's only 4 brand new ones, 2 based off of the most recent Mario and Zelda stages, and then 2 more stages to represent the entirely new franchises that were getting characters, Splatoon and Castlevania. With Smash Ultimate, they were already stretching themselves pretty thin to make it all possible, which leads to the idea that the next Smash game, it would just be impossible to top, since there's no way you could bring all of this back and add more on top of it. That'd be ridiculous. There's just no way it'd be possible. They would have no choice but to scale things back a bit, which is why my main prediction for the next Smash game is that they're going to be making Smash Ultimate 2. What the? Yeah, I don't think they're going to be scaling things back at all. I definitely think they're going to try to make this next game even bigger. People say it's impossible, but I really don't think it is. For one, all these models are already made. Smash always reused assets from the previous game, and Ultimate was no different. In fact, I'd say Ultimate was the most direct in its asset reuse.
Exactly the same!
And that was most likely done just to make this whole everyone is here thing and bring back as many stages as possible. Well, possible. Speaking of the stages, I honestly think that's probably what took the most amount of work for the developers, not necessarily the characters. Smash for Wii U only had 55 stages by the time the game was done, about half of what ends up in Ultimate. Smash for 3DS also had its own stages that were reused in Ultimate, but you know, it's the 3DS. They would still have to do a lot of work to make it look nice for an HD console. And as I mentioned, all these stages have Omega and Battlefield forms. Yeah, many of them reuse an asset and shrink it down to fit, but that would still require some modeling work, you know, for every single possible stage of the game. The point that I'm making is here, it was a lot of work to make these stages, and it definitely took a large chunk of development time, but, well, now all those assets are made. They're right there in Smash Ultimate, in all very pretty HD, so they wouldn't really need nearly as much touching up as something like the 3DS stages to Ultimate. All these character models are made. A lot of these assist trophies are made. Pokemon, items, all these assets don't need to have as much time dedicated to them as making new ones. That saves a lot on development time. Sure, they might go back and give a lot of this stuff some small touch-ups, but you know, that takes a lot less time than making these things from scratch. But okay, hold on, let's be real here. I'm not an idiot. Even with reusing all these assets and like going back and touching them up, that would still require an insane amount of work. Getting it all to look good in a new engine, make sure it's all functional, that takes a lot of time, to the point that you probably still couldn't do it and add a reasonable amount of new stuff as well. Unless you only want like 1 new character and 1 new stage or some shit, which is true. Unless they reuse the engine, the visual style. Now, I know many people are probably rolling their eyes at everything I'm laying out here. Smash Ultimate, but again, like, what's the point? You can already play Smash Ultimate on the Switch too. And what, like, it looks the same, it plays the same? That would make it even more redundant. But let me explain a little further. I was actually planning on making this video about a year ago, before the big Nintendo Switch 2 showcase happened. I ended up dropping it because I also thought that Smash 2 seemed a little too ridiculous, maybe even unnecessary. But something changed my mind recently, and that was Kirby Air Riders. I think this game really made me aware of what Sakurai's mindset is when it comes to making these games. He didn't just make another Kirby Air Riders with entirely new maps and modes. What he did was he took everything the previous game did, brought it all back, and then expanded upon it greatly. Top Ride was a small thing in the original game, so small that people thought it just might not return. It wasn't that popular anyways, but it did, and greatly expanded. Many vehicles from that game returned, every single racetrack from the original game is here, and there's also a bunch of new stuff, actual other characters you could play as, new copy abilities and items, a bunch of new city trial stuff. It's insane. Now, I understand that maybe it's not as impressive as I'm making it out to be. The original game was pretty light on content, even for GameCube standards. Bringing it back and making it bigger is way easier to do than building on top of something like Smash Ultimate. But really, the point's to show Sakurai's mindset. He wants to make these games as big as possible, bring back as much as he can. I don't think Sakurai is going to go into the next Smash game with the intention of making it smaller or scaling things back. However, I also don't think it's possible to bring back as much as possible from Ultimate unless he literally just makes Smash Ultimate again, with the same way of battling and the engine and the lighting, so that they would need to update the old stuff as little as possible, which is why my prediction is the next Smash game is going to be Smash Ultimate 2. Okay, but this really doesn't counter the point I brought up earlier. If it plays like Smash Ultimate, why buy it? Smash Ultimate's already playable on the Switch too. And yeah, that is a pretty good point, especially if this shit comes out to be like $70 or God forbid $80. I think Smash is sort of in an interesting spot right now. The other route that people say Smash could go down is the whole reboot idea. Slash the roster massively and focus more on changing things up like movesets and gameplays, side modes, full-blown story mode, things like that. Less characters would make that all much more possible. The thing is with that though, if you massively cut down the roster, that's going to be a big turnoff for people. Let's not kid ourselves here. The thing most people care about in Smash, especially people who play this game casually, is the characters, and Nintendo knows this. The characters are what gets all the big trailers. The DLC is about newcomers and not much else. Hell, even Mii costumes are a simple way to get characters in the game through these deformed versions of themselves. We can talk about the way the game plays and side modes and all that, but the big selling point to most of the audience is the characters. It's a bit of a lose-lose for Nintendo, isn't it? Bring back everyone, but have it be fundamentally the same game, killing people's interest in it, or cut down the roster for new exciting characters and new exciting gameplay, but kill a lot of people's interest in it. But I think if Nintendo were to choose one, they would prioritize bringing all the characters back. They know that's what sells these games, so that's probably what they're gonna go for. Of course, I am neglecting a pretty big part of all of this, the third-party characters. It doesn't matter if bringing them all back is technically possible. If you're not able to negotiate all these characters with these companies, then Ultimate 2 just wouldn't be happening. Granted, I actually don't think it'd be too difficult for them to pull off, at least when it comes to actual licensing. I don't think Sega or Capcom, Bandai Namco, SNK is going to disallow their characters being in this game. I think even Microsoft wouldn't be too hard, granted. All the stuff that's going on with them right now, it's hard to say how that might affect negotiations. Really, I feel like the biggest question mark is Square Enix. Would they allow not just Cloud, but Hero and Sephiroth as well to return? Cloud was notoriously hard to get in Ultimate. He was the last character that they were able to put into the game. Look at this source confirming it. Do you see it? Do you see the source, the real source about this real claim that's real and not made up? Yeah, I tried researching this claim and I could find no info on whether or not this was true. I think people just assumed this based on how little content there was for Cloud in the game at launch. But, that was also true for Smash 4. It wasn't like he had a bunch of stuff and then it got all stripped away for Smash Ultimate. Besides, I do think that with the position Nintendo is in right now, being much more successful, and Smash basically being this titan, I think it might be a bit more easier to get these characters in than it would be before. But, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not exactly sure how these companies think. That might not be a factor at all. But okay, they get all these characters back, but how would you advertise Smash Ultimate 2? They already did the whole everyone is here thing, and sure, you could just do it again. But I think they would go further. I think if they were to do this, they're going to try to bring back pretty much everything at this point. No reason not to. There's really only a handful of stages that didn't make a cut in Ultimate, like Poke Floats, that one Star Fox stage on Wii U, as well as the Donkey Kong one, Pac-Man from 3DS, as well as Rainbow Road. But since they wouldn't need to actively develop as many new assets for the other stages, I think it would be possible to actually bring back every single stage for this game. Even Miiverse, why the fuck not? I think they could also probably try to do a thing where they bring back every assist trophy, although that technically won't be possible since some assist trophies got turned into characters, so you really can't have them both be playable and be an assist trophy. Unless they do exactly that. Have it where a character is both an assist trophy and a fighter. Just have it where if you're playing as them, their assist trophy just can't be summoned. That way you can bring back assists like Isabel and Little Mac, as well as adding new fighters without removing theirs. I can see it now, a Smash Direct. Sakurai is talking about assist trophies, and once again we see Waluigi. Everyone's all upset and bummed, just for them to later reveal that Waluigi is also a playable fighter, in which they discuss how the characters are now able to be both. I think that would be really funny. But yeah, I think if they do another Ultimate style thing, they'd put a little bit more focus on not just every character's back, but everything is back. Now, I know I just got done saying about like how it's like a give or take thing. You can't have everything come back while also developing these side modes. And you know, something I've noticed about Smash over the years is in order to make the roster and stage list bigger, something else around the game has to be sacrificed to make it happen. At first it was small things. Smash 64 to Melee removed the little character animations on the character select screen. Then Melee to Brawl, we lost the unique target smash, now only being 5 and locked difficulty. Smash 4 just straight up didn't have a story mode. And then in Ultimate, well, lots of things got removed. Trophies were gone, we don't have a proper all-star mode, no boss rush, which is crazy. If you want a boss rush, you gotta play as Sephiroth. Basically, to make the roster larger, they sort of had to take development away from other aspects of the game to make it possible. So having Smash Ultimate 2 with every character again, and all the stages and items and assist trophies, would you be able to bring back any side mode at all, like Smash Run? Like, even with the most heavy asset reusing, that might be pushing it a bit. And, you know, the side modes are an important side of Smash. It's not like you just have no side modes whatsoever. Then again, Smash at launch was missing the stage builder and home run contest, so maybe they could just do a similar thing here, where at first the game doesn't have things like that, but then they add them slowly over time. I don't know, maybe. If they'd done it once, they'd probably do it again. But, yeah. That's the general gist of what I think the next Smash game's gonna be. Kind of an abrupt stop there, but I don't really have much else to say. So that's my predictions for the next Smash game. Smash, but they literally put everything possible in it and make it the biggest game in mankind. I'm a very reasonable person, and my expectations are 100% in check. But, you know, I do want to say, I did make an Ace Attorney prediction video not too long ago, and I ended up getting one of the things in that completely on the money. So, you know, I'm basically a prophet, and you should 100% believe in everything I say.
I'm just saying I might be Jesus. I might. I'm not saying for sure. I'm just saying it's a possibility. I might be Jesus.